As the authority of the Summerforth Empire diminished, rebellion broke out throughout the kingdom, and while the noble rulers of several provinces continued to grow stronger, the amateur ruler Salamakia of the province of Mysian eventually died. Thus, Mysian became divided into two factions, that of the governor's eldest son, Kuran Salamakia, and that of the youngest son, Vasmark Salamakia. The younger son occupies the provincial capital, Arantes, and as for the eldest son, Kuran, he is mobilizing forces to unseat him. And while all this war is going on, the lord of a small domain, known as Ars, sets off by carriage to contribute to the war, and in the middle of the journey, he notices Mireille and Charlotte making a commotion on top of the carriage, and asks the two to get down quickly. After all, they need to discuss preparations for the conference. But upon hearing this, Mireille asks him to go up and join them. However, Ars reminds her that they need to resolve much more important matters for now. At this, Mireille suggests that he take advantage of the good weather up there and relax a little. As for Reitz, he explains that war councils tend to last a long time, so he suggests that Ars follow Mireille and have some fun too. And when they see the sea right in front of them, they decide to take a break there to relax a little. And since she has no experience with the sea, Charlotte tries to drink the water, but soon spits it all out when she notices that it is very salty. At this, Mireille laughs when she sees her not knowing how to act in front of the sea, and then Charlotte asks if she has ever been to other places like that. To this, Mireille confirms that she has, and says that she has traveled to many different places. And when she hears her talking about the places she has visited, Charlotte realizes that these trips must be really fun. Then, Ars goes to Charlotte and promises that he will take her to see many places when the war is over and they have some peace again. But for now, she decides to enjoy the sea in front of her and goes to see the fish with Russell. And when she sees the assertive way he interacts with people, Mireille says that Ars is really good at winning people over. Then, Ars explains that he just wants to see his companion smiling. After all, that is enough to make him happy. And while they talk, Charlotte shoots her magic against the water, drawing the attention of a man who begins to chase them to complain. At that, everyone flees the place and arrives at the Second Military Council, which is inside a huge castle. And upon seeing Ars at that important conference, some of the provincial owners find his presence there strange, in that, Charlotte notices that everyone there thinks very highly of themselves, until suddenly, two gentlemen call Ars to talk, and notice that the boy was also one of those who received the Kuran invitation, and then, one of the men shows joy in seeing him there. Kuran himself appears there, and upon seeing Mireille next to Ars, he asks her what she is doing getting involved in politics again, and she in turn says she is willing to try to enter that field one last time, and furthermore, she humiliates him, saying that Ars is a much more competent master than Kuran. And upon hearing this, he begins to laugh, because he sees that she has not changed her way of being at all. Then, one of the gentlemen warns Kuran that Mireille is still related to Vasmark's right-hand man, Thomas Grangen, so there is still a risk that she is there to spy on them. However, Kuran states that this is not possible, as she is now in the service of Ars, the boy he asked for help, so this would be a bad time for her to be trying to get information about the enemy force, and what's more, Kuran reminds him that her skills will be of great help in the war. At this, the Lord decides to follow Kuran's orders, because if he is determined to trust her, he will not say anything against it. And as the council begins, one of Kuran's subordinates begins the council by reporting the current state of the war, and says that their forces currently total 110,000 soldiers. However, the enemy is still ahead of them with 20,000 more men, but to compensate, they still have control of the commercial city of Sempler, thus managing to maintain a good capital, enough to continue financing their battles for a few more years. And in addition, they also have the advantage in the quality of the troops. However, the enemy has more talented commanding officers. At this, Kuran states that they will remain stuck in a stalemate if things continue like this, therefore, defeating Vasmark is the first step towards establishing an independent nation. With that said, Kuran asks for ideas that can change the situation quickly. At this, one of the men stands up, and suggests that they take the western city of Bertudo. After all, it is one of the three largest cities like Sempler and Arcantes, with the difference that it does not have as much protection as Arcantes. And upon hearing this idea, everyone is in favor of it, except for Mireille, who calls everyone stupid for thinking of something so idiotic, and then she states that everyone there will lose the battle if they continue acting that way. And as for Vasmark, she describes him as a perfectionist coward who will not lift a finger if he is not sure of victory. And then she goes back to talking about the idea of taking Bertudo, Bertudo, and states that this would be almost impossible. After all, they would need a ton of troops to be able to take it. And in return, Sempler would be unprotected. In this, Vassmark would take advantage of this moment precisely to take the city, and thus, all the troops that were marching to Bertudo would have to return to protect Sempler, failing in their mission to conquer Bertudo. With that, more nobles would end up joining the enemy's side, as they considered them more intelligent. And after finishing listening to Mireille's analysis, Kuran agrees with her. However, he asks her to give him some ideas, at which point Mireille passes the word to Russell, but when they see that he is a child, the gentlemen are left confused. And then, Ars explains that Russell is the strategist of his domain. However, one of the men disdains Russell, because for him, a child would never be able to come up with a decent plan. However, Kuran gives the boy a chance, and asks him to go ahead with his idea. In this, Russell explains that if they want to invade Bertudo, they will need to block the enemy's entrance to Sempler first, in which case, his strategy is to make the enemy believe that they would be attacked if they tried to leave Arcantes, and Russell suggests that they draw the province of Paradil, to the north, into the fight, making the enemy think that they would be attacked by Paradil. But upon hearing this, one of the lords explains that Paradil swore loyalty to the imperial family, therefore, they will never get help from that province. And then, Russell suggests that they find an intermediary between them and Paradil, in which case they will have to bribe the Emperor of Summerforth. And after finishing listening to the whole plan, Kuran decides to start requesting imperial intervention to obtain the cooperation of the province of Paradil, and so, he assigns this mission to Ars. And after the council, Ars is worried that he will end up failing. In this, Charlotte questions him if they can really ask things of the Emperor. And then, Ars tries to push Reitz for this task, however, he refuses, saying that it would be wiser to send someone else in his place. Then, Ars goes to Leisha and Hammond, and begins to talk about the serious matters of war. However, Leisha interrupts him to serve them something to eat before the conversation. As for Reitz, he apologizes to Hammond for having to feed him too, but upon hearing this, Hammond reminds him that he is also one of his guests. And upon seeing Leisha and Ars' interaction, he notices that the conversation about the war is not going forward, as Leisha continues to drag Ars to do various things, except talk about what is important. Then, she takes him to see the view from above the city, and says that she started to talk more with the residents there, even managing to make several friends that she didn't have before. And what's more, this made her value their domain even more, and that said, she remembers that Ars also defends his city very bravely. However, he claims that his companions are the ones who do most of the work while he just stays in the background. And suddenly, she starts to get closer to him, making the atmosphere a little heated. However, she moves away when she remembers that she needs to show Ars something else, and so, they go to her garden, which contains the flowers that Ars gave her. And after that, she finally pays attention to hear what he has to say. Hammond gets authorization to start the conversation, as the matter to be discussed is very serious. However, Leisha refuses to ask her father for permission, as she herself wants to decide for herself what to do. After all, that is why they are walking alone, so that no one interrupts them. With that, Ars goes ahead and asks her to take on the role of negotiating with the Emperor of Summerforth. And although she is not 100% sure that she will carry out the mission, Leisha accepts the invitation anyway. But in return, she asks Ars to marry her as soon as the war is over. And upon hearing this, Ars is all disconcerted, as he finds the request very sudden. However, Leisha says that she had already decided to make that request to him the day they met. And upon hearing this, Ars realizes that she really loves him, and furthermore, he begins to notice that she has done a lot for him. In this, he apologizes to her for having made Leisha have to ask him to marry him. And then, he redoes that scene, and asks her to marry him immediately. In this, he says that it would be better to wait for the war to pass so that they could have a more peaceful marriage. However, he reminds her that they could end up facing many other dangers until the war is over. Therefore, he wants to be able to have her by his side in the middle of the war to protect her. And upon hearing this, Leisha makes it clear that she has no intention of depending on him to be protected. After all, she is the one who wants to protect him. In this, the two come into conflict to decide who will protect who, until in the end, they put it aside and go to Hammond and the others to announce the marriage. But upon hearing this, Hammond says that it is still too early for the two to get married. However, Leisha says that she has already decided to go ahead with the marriage, regardless of what anyone tells her. And upon noticing that his daughter is sure of what she wants, Hammond decides not to be a thorn in her side, and ends up accepting the marriage without much hesitation. And soon after, he embraces the two and asks his subordinates to prepare a banquet. And after that, they meet with Pham, who finally finishes investigating the imperial family, as agreed. And then, she confirms that currently the one who exercises the emperor's authority is Minister Shakma, who in turn, is an opportunist who promotes any type of policy that can directly benefit him. And when they return to talk about the negotiation itself, Ars explains that they must travel to Sempler first, and then, they will take a boat arranged by the Kuran, which will take them to the imperial capital, and there, they will petition Prime Minister Shakma to mediate a meeting between them and Paradil. With all this done, they can begin negotiations with the desired province. As for the negotiation itself, he says that Lisha will take care of that part. After all, he has complete confidence in her diplomatic talent. But even after hearing their entire plan, Mireille wonders if it will work. After all, they are still just two children. At this, Lisha calms her down and says that Lumiere will accompany them during the negotiation. And upon hearing this, Ars is surprised and asks what the girl will do exactly, to which Lisha says that she only intends to keep Lumiere by their side, because as they are children, it would be almost impossible for them to gain the trust of adults right away. And precisely for this reason, she had the idea of taking an adult and subordinate of the Kuran with them, to give more credibility. And when she sees that the girl had already thought of every detail of the plan, Mireille is amazed, and says that now she can understand why Ars chose her as his wife. And as for Charlotte, she makes it clear that this marriage has not yet passed with her approval, and furthermore, she criticizes the two for having chosen to get married right in the middle of a war. As for Lisha, she ignores Charlotte's comments and just asks her to teach her more about battle, magic and other things. And upon hearing this, Charlotte starts to feel more comfortable with Lisha, and even forgets that she was mad at her 2 seconds ago. As for Ars, he asks Charlotte to join their guard, and she readily accepts his offer, but early on in the journey, Charlotte falls asleep, and Ars wonders if they will really be safe with her as their guard. And suddenly, Fam meets them following the carriage with her horse, and then, she says she has important information to give them before they leave. In this case, the Vasmark made an alliance with the province of Sites. And with that, Fam offers to contact them when she has more information on this matter. And upon hearing this, Ars notices that Kuran will soon enter a war on two fronts, with Sites and Vasmark facing him. And if Sites had in fact summoned Missian, that means that Lamberg would be the first to be affected. Seeing him tense, Lisha reassures him, and says that if they can keep Paradil by their side, they will remain tied, and besides, she believes that Sites must be thinking that he will be able to invade Kuran more easily, now that he is in partnership with Vasmark. However, if Paradil sides with the Kuran army, any invasion will have considerable bloodshed. After all, the enemies would not be able to pass through the kingdom's borders so easily. Therefore, Lisha promises that she will make this negotiation a success, so that they can finally conquer Paradil. And upon hearing this, Ars is surprised that she has already thought of everything beforehand. However, Lisha states that thinking about the future is one of the elementary pillars of politics. And in the middle of the journey, the carriage shakes, knocking some of her diplomacy books to the ground. At this, Lisha gathers her books in embarrassment, and says that she was just studying some things. And upon seeing this, Ars says that he has a lot to learn from her ambition, and she in turn says that she is very happy to see him trusting her so much, and furthermore, Lisha makes it clear that she intends to be as useful as possible to him, since she is now Ars' wife. As for the boy, he is encouraged and says that they must do everything they can to make the negotiation work. Charlotte notices the two of them clinging to the back seat and starts complaining to them. As they continue their journey, they arrive at Sempler Castle, where they receive news again that Vasmark has joined forces with the province of Sites. However, Lisha says that after finishing the negotiation with Paradil, their plan would be to negotiate with Sites to prevent the invasion. And upon hearing this, Kuran praises her intelligence, and apologizes for having to burden them with such an important and difficult task. Having said that, he takes the liberty of talking about more superficial things, and says that he is surprised to see Ars married, as he never imagined that the boy would get married so soon. To this, Ars says that they were married only a day ago, and that he does not feel worthy of Lisha. And in the middle of the conversation, Reng appears there, and introduces himself as Kuran's eldest son. Salamakia is the next governor of Missian. Having said that, he goes to his father, and asks if those children will really be able to make that important negotiation. And upon hearing this, Kuran reprimands his son, and apologizes to Ars for that rude question. Then, Kuran calls Ars to talk in private, in which, he asks if the boy managed to glimpse any ability in Reng. After all, Reng is one of his sons who had the least discipline as a child, and although he is already a 20-year-old adult, Kuran wants to be able to get the best out of his son, but he doesn't know exactly how he can do that. And then, Ars explains that even though Reng's skills aren't worth much now, the boy has an impressive latent potential, and upon hearing this, Kuran is happy, and leaves the place wishing Ars good luck with the negotiation. Arriving at the port of Sempler, Ars lets Lisha buy whatever she wants, but she says she's happy if they just keep walking. But as they do so, she ends up becoming interested in a jewel from one of the stalls, but tries tries to hide it, saying that she's just admiring the beauty of the jewel. However, Ars realizes that she's lying, and so, he buys the jewel. Even so, at this, Lisha asks to pay for the gift with her own money, but Ars refuses, and says that he is the one who will buy the jewel for her. And moving on, they go to the ship, which will be responsible for taking them to their final destination. At this, Ars thanks Lumiere again for agreeing to accompany them in the negotiation. And suddenly, Ring appears there, offering to go with them too. After all, having another adult on the team will certainly help him even more. But upon hearing this, Ars asks if Kuran approved of his coming. However, Ring says no, because as an adult, he can already make decisions for himself, and besides, the boy says that he was already wanting to go see the capital anyway, so if he goes there and still comes back with a conquest, that will certainly please his father. That said, Ring promises that he will make the mission a success, and in the middle of the trip, they save a group of men who were adrift at sea, but when Charlotte approaches to give them a glass of water, one of the men pulls her close to them, and orders everyone to put their valuables in a bag, otherwise they will kill Charlotte. But upon hearing this, she finishes off the bandits with a single attack, and says that they indeed chose the wrong ship to attack. And as for Ars, he asks what those guys do to survive. At this, Ring is confused by this sudden question, and says that those men are clearly evil pirates. However, Ars says that the knife they carry is more like a tool for cleaning fish than an actual weapon. At this, the leader of the gang reveals that they were actually fishermen who worked in the port of the imperial capital, and they received a constant loan from the capital, which was enough for them to buy what they needed to work. But after the constant financial problems that the capital began to suffer, they were also seriously affected by this, until they reached the point of needing to borrow money from a merchant. However, as the interest rates were higher, they ended up having to resort to crimes in order to support their families. But upon hearing this, Ring shouts at the gang, and says that this does not justify such crimes. However, Ars sympathizes with the men's situation, and offers them 2 jewels. To them, that if sold, they must give 3 gold coins. And upon seeing this, Ring reminds Ars that they were attacked by that same gang. And as for the leader of the group, he refuses to accept this show of mercy, saying that they do not need it yet. However, Ars makes it clear that this is not pity or charity, but rather a loan, so they can use that money to go back to fishing and pay it back little by little, when they have enough money. And upon hearing all this, Ring says that Ars is really a fool, but lets him do as he pleases. And after that, they arrive at the imperial capital, and are soon shocked by the poor air that the place emanates, with several people living on the streets throughout the capital. And in addition, Lumiere notices that the nobles there seem to enjoy luxury more than anywhere else, creating a division between the people, due to the immense inequality of wealth between them. As for Ring, he believes that the local governor must be a fool blinded by money, so this will make the negotiation easier than expected. And suddenly, Lisha asks them to continue the trip without her for now. After all, she needs to make some preparations for the next morning. And the next day, Lisha meets them again, but this time wearing a different dress than before, and although everyone is left confused for now, Lisha makes it clear that they will understand later why she did this. And when they go to Minister Shakma, he asks them to get straight to the point and say what they want. At this, Ring tries to take advantage of this opportunity to appear, saying that he is there to ensure the success of the negotiation. However, Shakma says that his presence will not make much of a difference, because what matters is how much they are willing to pay. At this, Lisha starts by offering only 500 gold coins even though she has more, because that way she can gradually increase the amount, giving Shakma the impression that in the end he will be earning more. However, Shakma starts asking for at least 5,000 gold. At this, Lisha gets around the situation, saying that he must be just joking, since 5,000 gold is an unrealistic amount. And then, she starts increasing the amount until it reaches 1,000 gold coins, but Lisha says that she cannot give more than that. As for Shakma, he finally accepts the offer, but Ring comes there and ruins everything, revealing that they actually have 2,000 gold coins, therefore, they should give all the money, so that Shakma does not underestimate Sempler's economic power. And when he sees that they were trying to deceive him, Shakma gets angry and cancels the negotiation, as long as they pay the 2,000 gold coins and an additional bonus, as an apology for having tried to deceive him. At that moment, Lisha runs to him again, and decides to give some jewelry as a way to supplement the negotiation money. And when he sees the size of the girl's determination, Shakma accepts the 2,000 gold coins and those jewelry as payment, therefore, they will begin to mediate Paradil under their name. However, Shakma advises them to be careful when negotiating with this kingdom. And that was another video. If you liked it and want more videos like this, subscribe, and leave your like. Here on the screen there is another video for you. Until next time.